So, welcome back to my Survey of Criminal Theories course. I want to welcome you to Chapter 3. This chapter, we're going to focus on victims and victimization. Now, I've shared before that I have lectured on victimology, and victimology is the discipline of criminology that focuses on the victim and the victim's role in their own victimization. Today's lecture is going to primarily focus on this, and it's important to know that even though we have a course designated on victims and their victimization, it is noteworthy to focus on this in the context of criminology because this is our last chapter before we're going to start talking about some criminal theory. So I want you to stay tuned there. But let's jump right in. So what is victimology? Victimology is simply defined as the study of the victim's role in criminal events. And who are victimologists? All they are criminologists who focus on victims of crime. So remember, a criminologist is someone who focuses on and studies the nature and extent and the reasons why someone engages in crime. A criminologist looks at criminal theory as well. But a victimologist is really focused on studying the victim. What role did they play? Because what we're going to show today, even though this is kind of a crash course on victimology in today's lecture, and we have a specialized course on victimology. You may see some of my other videos on this page or in other settings or avenues. I do want you to look at, and I do want you to focus on the fact that the victimologist is a criminologist, but their primary focus is on the victim, whereas the criminologist is focusing on the offender, what's causing the offender to engage in crime. Now, can victims play a role in their own victimization? And the reason why I want to give you a thought on this, class, is because this red Nike hat is very symbolic. Now, I don't have time, and I'm trying to keep my lectures targeted to a certain period of time. I still want to encourage and thank anyone that is a subscriber, anyone that has been sharing this, has been following this. As again, I'm wanting to foster a dialogue by being the professor for the people in having this forum where you can come and learn about criminology and criminal justice, because nobody's really talking about this, right? Yeah, we talk about true crime stuff, but nobody's really talking about criminology and criminal justice and doing it at this level. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your shares. Thank you for your likes and your subscribes and your subscriptions and just all of that. So I don't have time per se to go about this. This may be a separate video I may do at some point, but this red Nike hat absolutely bears a significance. And like I said, I may talk about how can you as a victim play a role in your own victimization. Maybe that'll be something I can do as a separate video. When looking at the costs, there are some costs associated with being a victim, right? There's societal level costs, and these are economic costs. Victimization is about a $295 billion industry. That can include any number of expenses. It can include, the cost for insurance, the cost for investigation, the pain and suffering, the loss of quality of life. You even have the direct tangible costs. For example, if a person was victimized and let's say their car was stolen, now you got to go get a rental car, or then if the car is totaled, you got to pay the insurance deductible, and it's just all of these different tangible costs that exist that sometimes people aren't aware of. So there are significant economic costs associated with being victimized. There's also social emotional problems. These are experienced by nearly 68% of victims who suffer violent crimes. Think about how if someone victimizes you, there is going to be severe emotional distress, because we as humans, we have emotions and we have feelings and we have desires. But if we are victimized, we could absolutely experience an emotional distress within our victimization because we've been hurt and we've been wronged. And what is that hurt and wrong going to do? It's going to disrupt us at school. It's going to affect us at work. It's going to produce anxiety and depression. It might even lead to post-traumatic stress disorder and PTSD, within feeling a level of stress or anxiety or issues with relationships, two things tend to happen. One, we as a society sometime will blame the victim, and in other instances, we have to worry about the fear that the victim is going to have, even on everyday, normal life occurrences. Going to the store, a person should never be fearful about driving to the store. But if they experience their car breaking down in the middle of the night and a person, robbed them or assaulted them or attacked them on that route to the store, there will be a significant level of victim fear. So fear and blame are two things that generally will happen as a key social emotional problem. Now, again, victimization does cause significant social problems. We know it causes stress and anger. Sometimes victims may want revenge. And listen, revenge is never the answer, right? A couple of chapters ago, I talked about the Code of Hammurabi, nearly 3,000 years ago. The eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth doctrine. That was the primary basis of revenge. If somebody does something to me, I need to do it back to them. And we aren't that type of society. However, in some cases, being victimized will prompt revenge. People will want to take revenge themselves, or their family or loved ones or people close to them will seek out revenge. So either way, understand that victimization is going to cause social problems because people sometimes don't know how to cope and handle those social problems. So we do have to look at the social ecology of victimization. I talked about this the last chapter. So if you tuned in and you saw chapter 2, the nature and extent of crime, this right here will make a little bit of sense to you. For example, we have to think about violent crimes. Where are we seeing more violent crimes? We're seeing them in urban communities, more densely populated areas. That's not saying you can't get a violent crime in a rural community, or you can't get a violent crime in a community that's a gated community where people are making a lot of money. Whatever, it does occur. What we do know and what we focus on is that, yes, the social ecology of victimization occurs. Where do we see most of our violent crime victims? A lot of times we see them in more urban areas, more densely populated areas. Same thing with our victims in terms of seasonal variations. We see them a lot during the summer. School is out. People are away from home. If you're on the beach, and you're in your bikini or you're in your swim trunks and alcohol is involved, perhaps people can get into an argument or someone can be inappropriate. Like there's all these things that occur when looking at the different ecology of victimization. And then one thing I want to point out in terms of crimes in schools, kids in schools are more likely to experience a victimization within that school and at the hands of other kids, period. Students are more likely to experience a victimization while they're at school at the hands of other students, period. So that's where you see a lot of crime occurring in schools because it's done and perpetuated at the hands of other students. It's not usually just some random person that just walked in from the school. It's another student that will victimize another student. The household plays a pivotal and key role as well. Now, we know that urban areas are very, very vulnerable. Homeowners are less vulnerable than renters. When you're renting, you think about a transient community. A person that's renting doesn't have a full tie to that house compared to the homeowner. The person who owns their home knows that this is an investment that I have for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So the renter has no true investment because they're transient. They can move, they can get up, they can leave. Plus, got to talk about this, and we'll get to this in a couple of chapters, but we know right now economically, if you desire to own a home, it's just not happening. Unless you have a lot of capital, a lot of equity, you have a lot of money, when you have virtually no other debt, you're not going to own a home, because the average home price right now is the worst it's been in history. I think a starting home is somewhere between maybe $420,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. So, renting is the most logical option for the vast majority of our population. But with that being said, the household does tell a story. A person who is a homeowner is going to be less vulnerable, especially if most of the homes in their area are from homeowners, because it's an investment. A renter doesn't have that same level of investment, but it's hard. Now, I do want you to consider my old hood in West Philly. Now, I'm not going to pull this up. However, you can type in that address and circle it around. And what I would hope that you would look at if you were to type in this address in Google Maps or in MapQuest or some other map website, you would see that if you pan around my old neighborhood, you'd see drug houses, you'd see a neighborhood in decay, excuse me, a neighborhood in decay and ruin. You would see that, right? And I put this in the lecture because I want to show that sometimes neighborhoods play a key and pivotal role in a victimization. And we will cover this again when we get to social structure theory. Now, what are some victim characteristics? As you can see, there are a number of characteristics which have to be considered when we look at the victim. Gender, we know that males are more likely to be victimized by strangers. Males are more likely to experience victimization compared to females, because we know males have kind of a sense of bravado, machismo, maybe can't let anything go. Sexual orientation plays a key role. Again, if a person is in certain communities or they have a certain status, there's always the chance and likelihood of being victimized because of their status. But there's other things. For example, race and ethnicity, minorities, people of color experience victimizations at a higher rate. These are all characteristics that are commonly looked at in my victimology class. So if you're one that is interested in really diving into understanding some of the characteristics associated with being victims based on data and research, by all means, take that victimology class, because we go over all of these. Now, there are 3 specific characteristics for potential victimization, and this is very, very important. We have target vulnerability, target antagonism, and target gratifiability. I know this might feel like I'm going quickly here, but I'm going to go into the next slide, and we're going to break down all 3 of these, all right? So here's our first one. Let's talk about target vulnerability. What does that mean? Think about what makes you a vulnerable target. Are you vulnerable because, let's say, you're 5'2" and 105 pounds? Are you vulnerable because you don't have a strong mental capacity? Like there are people that have innate vulnerabilities, and some of these vulnerabilities they're born with. Sometimes they develop, sometimes they inherit, or sometimes something may have happened in their life that may cause this vulnerability. When a victim has a physical weakness and they have psychological distress, what it does is it renders them incapable of resisting or deterring crime. Let me show you in pictures, because I talked about this in the last lecture, and it's so funny. The way I pattern myself as a professor, right? Even though I'm doing these videos, it's very different. Although in some of the lecture slides you see like pictures and images or whatever. But when I'm doing this in a live class, I have videos associated. We have a lot of debates and discussions. So you're just kind of getting a snippet of what to expect if you ever were to take me in a live class or an in-person class. So yesterday, or in a different video, I talked about how females are they are intellectually superior in terms of their verbal aptitude over men, whereas I said that men are visual learners. I like to incorporate visual learning in my lectures because it will help my students, and I cannot underscore enough how many students said, Professor Fields, that image, that video helped me because visually, even as a student, you can associate whatever I'm talking about with the image. So I went on that little soliloquy. Either way, I wanted to just give you why you're going to see some images in just a moment. So when we look at target vulnerability, here's what comes to mind. Think about a senior citizen, someone who is in their 70s, 80s, whatever. A person who's a senior citizen doesn't have the ability to defend themselves. Not saying that they can't, but they don't have the ability to defend themselves as if they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, right? Children, you see all these children walking. Again, children are vulnerable based on their stature. Being a child, an adult, say, I'm an adult, you need to listen to me. And then even this woman that's in a wheelchair, if a person has a disability that incapacitates them to a wheelchair or crutches or they're just incapacitated in whatever setting, that produces a level of vulnerability. And that means that victim is what's called an easy target. So remember these images, right? These are helpful in thinking about target vulnerability. Now we have target antagonism. What does it mean to antagonize somebody? Well, if you antagonize somebody, that means that you are jeering them, you are trying to get under their skin, you're trying to make them mad. Think about how there's a characteristic which increases the risk because a person is angry or jealous. If you are a man and you are very angry by seeing two men walk down the street, or you're a woman who's very angry by seeing two women together walking down the street holding hands, or you drink alcohol and you're rowdy because you're fired up and you're drunk, or you can't stand somebody because they're cheering for the opposite team, that there's a level of antagonism there, right? A person walking into a sports bar with the opposite team is not doing so to antagonize you, right? But you're antagonized because they showed up with the other sports team. And that's what target antagonism is. There are some characteristics that will increase the risk of victimization because that characteristic caused anger and jealousy and a destructive impulse. So again, you see two men, they're enjoying a drink at the bar, they could be in a relationship, but you yourself are angry because those two guys are together. These two women, you can tell they're holding hands, and you're angry because you don't like seeing two women holding hands, and you run up and punch them. And you could be a man or a woman doing that. From sports, our sports people, if you're a fan of the Florida Gators, or here in Atlanta, we have a ton of Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia dominates the state, and you hate the Florida Gators. As a Georgia Bulldog fan, you see somebody walking down the street with a Florida Gator shirt on and you punch them and verbally berate them. What's wrong with you? And of course, Michigan, Ohio State, some argue is the greatest college football rivalry in history. Those two schools do not like each other. But that's a level of antagonism. A characteristic for cheering the wrong team or cheering the opposite team, or two guys together or two women together, looking at those and being angry over seeing that causes a person to react and causes a potential victimization. We also have target gratifiability. Some victims have a quality, possession, skill, or attribute that an offender wants. If you have attractive possessions, fancy cars, nice jewelry, sometimes that will make a person vulnerable to potentially experiencing a victimization. So when we look right here, again, I just pulled some photos from the internet. No, nobody in particular. You see here the gold chains and the chains that are worth more than some people make in a year or two. Like maybe it takes a person 3, 4, 5 years just to make enough money to afford that one chain. You see this person right here, all that money they're posed with. That's probably what, couple $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. Look at these fancy cars, the Maserati, and I believe Lamborghini. Like sometimes people will see those things and say, you know what? I want to go after that target because they have these belongings and I want them. I gratify them. I crave those things, right? And it's wrong because you have a victim here. It doesn't matter that, I'm not a flaunting person, but the people flaunting this money and flaunting these expensive chains, they did earn them, right? They are, a musician or an artist, and they earned them. So why should other people be jealous of them for flaunting it and want to victimize them? But it does happen. In fact, we have an infamous case that we're going to get to in just a second on that happening. And it's one that we talk about in class. So what about victims and their criminals? Again, males are more likely to be victimized by a stranger. Females are more likely to be victimized by a friend or acquaintance. Again, I've talked about this in other courses. One of the things I do want to point out is that crime tends to be intra-racial, so, black on black, or white on white, or black on white, but crime tends to, again, it affects people from all walks of life, right? So it doesn't matter that you could be wealthy or non-wealthy. You can be, one color or one ethnicity. Crime still operates as such. So what are some of our theories on victimization? Well, there's one thing called the victim precipitation theory. There's two types of victim precipitation, right? We have active precipitation, aggressive or provocative behavior that results in a person's victimization. This does draw a strong link to victim gratifiability. One of the things I want you to think about is flaunting. So when we think about aggressive or provocative behavior, just as you saw in the previous images, and I have images coming up because I always want to help my students remember these terms and remember what these are when they see them in quizzes or tests. When we think of someone having a sense of, I gratify and I want what they have, but I can't get what they have because maybe I'm not wealthy, or I don't have the money or the means to get those things, but I'm also angry that they're flaunting it too. So I'm going to go after them because they should not be flaunting. Even though they have the ability to buy these possessions and have the wealth and all that, I'm going to go after them, right? So you have right here, this kid on the left, I have no idea who he is, but he's flaunting. He's showing you the weapons he has on his wall, knives, nunchucks, other sticks. He's got money, he's got chains, he's wanting to be hard. You have these individuals right here, rap group Migos, 21 Savage. You have these people right here. Look at the wealth that these people have. Again, they have hundreds of thousands of dollars on their neck. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in jewelry. Again, stuff that we would never, ever, ever see in our lifetime. But because of this perception of flaunting, it's playing an active role. It's called active precipitation. It doesn't mean that it's right, but people will see it and say, you, my friend, want to be robbed. You, my friend, want to be burglarized, right? So that's the active precipitation. It is equivalent to flaunting your riches and what you have. One of the most notable instances of active precipitation, even though they weren't flaunting, but they got very sloppy and careless, was this rapper right here, Pop Smoke. Pop Smoke got this gift bag. You see Amiri, it's blurred out. But what did it have? It had his address on there. Pop Smoke posted this on social media. I don't recall which social media site he was on, but he posted this, right? And people, because they're jealous and because he's famous, they decided they were going to go rob him, and he lost his life. So one of the things to think about is flaunting, whether inadvertent or advertent, can be fatal. It absolutely can. And it's a prime definition of an active precipitation when we look at victim precipitation theory and how some people play an active role in their victimization. Now, if we have something called active, we have to have passive, right? Passive precipitation are those behaviors that were not intended to cause the victimization. However, other factors contributed to the victimization. Think about a person's gender, a person's race. I like to think about target antagonism and even target vulnerability to an extent. Antagonism being that, hey, you are whatever race you are what gender you are, you're minding your business, but people are angry because you are different from them. And they feel that you're antagonizing them, or they antagonize you because you're different. And of course, vulnerability, because we know we have some populations of people that may be vulnerable because they have a disability, because they're a child, because they're a senior citizen, right? So with the passive precipitation, one, I include this, and I was like, think of these women, right? Again, they're having a nice time out, they're minding their business, but because of how they're dressed, some people might argue that they are inviting a potential victimization to come their way, and it's wrong. These women should be able to enjoy themselves out in a foreign country or wherever they are at late at night, but some people will argue that their dress is inviting a victimization. That's wrong, but it's considered passive. Right here, you see a lot of protests. There were protests around surrounding law enforcement treatment of people and political protests, and you have alt-right groups out there holding their flags. And if you show up at a protest, generally speaking, there's always the chance and there's always the risk that things can get physical. And you see right here, this man in the military camo hat, I mean, he is face to face, almost nose to nose with that black man. I don't know if punches were thrown. I don't know what was happening, but man, they get very, very, very tense. Things get extremely tense. And when people's emotions run high and run rampant, sometimes punches get thrown and tempers flare, but that is passive precipitation, right? Passively playing a role in a victimization, okay? Now, another notable theory, since we have victim precipitation theory, are lifestyle theories. Now, I absolutely love lifestyle theories. And if anybody, whether you're watching this or you just tune in and watch many of these YouTube videos or watch some of these video recordings, what I hope is that you'll see that I'm very passionate about what I lecture on, and more importantly, I'm passionate about these notable lifestyles, because I will preach to the choir that there are 3 notable lifestyles that criminologists have identified and argued, and they are true. And you might find yourself in one of these 3 lifestyles. Hopefully you won't, but if you're listening to me, there's a chance that you're automatically in one of these lifestyles, and here they are. The high risk, college, and criminal lifestyle. 3 notable lifestyles: the high risk, college, and criminal lifestyle. Well, let's go right through it, right? Think about the high risk lifestyle. You like to take drugs. You like to be out late at night. You're a man or a woman walking in an urban area at 2 a.m. I tell people all the time, would you want to be walking in certain parts of Atlanta at 1 or 2 a.m? And like nobody's like willing to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll do it. Think about that. Think about living on the streets, people who are unhoused or homeless, people who are involved in prostitution, even if you're in a gang. And yes, gangs have a criminal element, and I talk about gangs too, because that's another one of my specialty topics. But if you're just in a gang while you are committing crimes, generally speaking, just being associated with the gang members is a high risk in itself, because what if somebody just comes by and starts shooting at you because you're in a rival gang? There's a great danger and risk being in this high risk lifestyle. Here's our next one, the college lifestyle. This is one that if you are a student, whether you're a student of mine or you're just listening or you are in a class of mine, if you're a college student, you're in a dangerous lifestyle, because there's the sense of partying, there's the sense of taking recreational drugs, there's the sense of being in certain locations, being around certain groups. There's this whole idea that, hey, and when I'm in college, I can live a reckless life, I can live a fun and fast life, and it's okay. Like, I'm young, I'm all right. It's all right to have fun. It's all right to drink. And you see the girls right up at the front, the guys, and they got the red Solo cups and all like that. It's a rite of passage. we get drunk and we go to parties and we do it all. We become quote unquote weekend warriors. We're partying, and especially in the fall during football season. If you go to any college or major college or university and they have a football team, good or bad, it's like a party city. Parties are planned on Thursday. Parties are planned on Thursday. And then come Friday and Saturday, it's parties. Sunday, we kind of unwind, and then we're back at it on Monday until we repeat the cycle. The fall is like the most glorious time of the year for the college student. But there's partying, and there's a danger associated with taking drugs. And then lastly, the criminal lifestyle. This arguably, in some instances, is the most dangerous lifestyle, because if you are committing criminal acts, you're burglarizing homes, you're robbing people, you're committing, sex-related crimes, you're killing people. Eventually, that lifestyle is going to lead to someone getting arrested or even killed. So I love lifestyle theories because when I'm talking to college students and in this forum, I'm talking to the world, I hope that you can find if you are in one of these lifestyles, you can say, wow, Professor Fields has a good point. If I'm being out all these late hours of the night, I'm driving fast, I'm speed racing on the interstate doing 110 or 15 miles an hour, like that's high risk. That's me living a risky life. I could die too, and there's dangers. Or if I'm a college student, yeah, partying is a rite of passage in college, but what if something happens? What if somebody slips something into one of my drinks, or whatever the case may be? What if I'm assaulted? And then, of course, the criminal lifestyle, the idea that if you're committing burglaries, committing robberies, and committing other sorts of crimes, people are more likely to get arrested or even be killed. So just take hold on lifestyle theories, and criminologists have argued these are the three most notable lifestyles within that victims may encounter. So deviant place theory is another theory that is commonly associated with victimization. The greater exposure to dangerous places, the more likely people are to become victims of crime and violence. This is easy. I mean, if you live in a community where there's an inherent danger, right, where people are more apt and more likely to commit robberies, and maybe there's a significant decay in the community and there's visible signs of dysfunction and it's not safe, then a person is more likely to become a victim. It's going to happen. It is absolutely going to happen. Now, some communities also may inadvertently encourage both crime and victimization. Again, if homes are run down and they don't, nobody's taking the initiative to take care of these dilapidated houses or encourage the city to come in and utilize code enforcement, then this belief, and we'll talk about this in a couple of chapters, this belief is that, hey, crime is accepted here and being a victim is accepted here too, because nobody's willing to stand up and clean things up. Now, within another theory that is important and appropriate when looking at victimization includes routine activities theory. So one, there are suitable targets, capable guardians, and motivated offenders. When we look at the suitable targets, right? Think about a suitable target being a nice home. Think about someone having expensive jewelry. Think about somebody having goods that people can transport or easily get to. When we look at that leg of capable guardians, who are capable guardians? Police officers, homeowners, having security systems. And when we look at a motivated offender, we think about a person who is highly motivated to commit crime. When all three of those converge together, that's when you have crime. Now, I will always in my class say, you can do something about suitable targets, right? Not saying you can't have jewelry, not saying you can't have expensive belongings, not saying you can't live in a nice home. You can have those things, but be safe, be smart. Make sure your door is locked. Make sure you're doing perimeter checks. Make sure that you close the garage, etc. With capable guardians, yes, you're not always going to be home 24/7. Unless you live as a recluse, you're not going to be home 24/7. But what you can do is you can have an alarm system, you can have security cameras, you can even potentially have private security as well, depending on your socioeconomic status, right? The one thing that we can't control at all, we can't control a motivated offender. Let me repeat, we cannot control a motivated offender, because what you're going to find next week in next chapter is that crime is absolutely offender specific. I can't wait till we get to the next chapter, and I will summarize what our next chapter is going to be at the end of this lecture. So we cannot do anything about a motivated offender. So you can't disrupt that one circle, but you can absolutely disrupt the other two. And as long as one of those is disrupted, we do not have crime. The second they all converge together, we have crime. So I just wanted to show you really quickly, in terms of the victimization theories, what the theory is, precipitation, what's the premise, lifestyle. Again, the three lifestyles: the high risk, the criminal, the college, deviant place. Of course, it looks at neighborhood. It looks at neighborhoods and whether or not they encourage not only crime but victimizations. And then, of course, the routine activities theory, where you have those motivated offenders, suitable targets, and a lack of capable guardians. And when they all converge together, you have crime. So our last thing is we kind of start pulling this all together and putting a bow on this chapter on victims and victimization. We understand that we do have a means to care for the victim. In fact, there are a number of services that exist for victims. Victim service programs, they are going to aid and assist victims as they navigate through the criminal justice system. But these services, victim-related services, include a plethora of options. You have victim compensation crime funds. Those are where victims can receive monetary essentially compensation for being victimized. You can offer a victim impact statement, which is talking about how the victimization has impacted you or your loved one. There's also legal protections that exist as well. Victim notification is also prevalent. And so when looking at victims, right, and recognizing that victims have services, one of the services, or I guess the best word, are safeguards, so to speak, are what's called the Victim Bill of Rights. And what the Victim Bill of Rights is that it offers certain key inalienable rights that victims have. And many states have some variation of the Victim's Bill of Rights. Victims have the right to be notified. They have the right to know what's going on with the individual who wronged them or who harmed them or who caused them to become a victim. They have the right to be present at criminal justice proceedings. I know a lot of people don't understand the criminal justice system, and that's why I've started this channel, because I want to give you some insight and an overview on the criminal justice system. But with that being said, please know and please look at the fact that you have a right to participate in the process. You have a right to be present. You have a right to have your voice heard. You have a right to have your information be confidential, because you don't want to be a victim and next thing you know, you're getting phone calls and mail and drop-ins to your residence because people know you were victimized and they know where you live. You have these inalienable rights. So who can help you, right? You're victimized. You've been subjected to some victimization and you don't know what to do. And are you supposed to be left to your own devices? Absolutely not. I love victim advocates and I love what they do, because victim advocates are special personnel who are going to help crime victims not only cope with the trauma or the victimization that they have experienced, but they're going to help them navigate through the criminal justice system. See, I understand the criminal justice system better than most, right? I've worked in the criminal justice system for the better part of 15 years. I'm comfortable in a courtroom. I'm comfortable going in a courthouse. I'm not intimidated by talking to lawyers. I'm not intimidated being questioned, because in the course of my career, most of it which has been in law enforcement, I have been questioned. I have had to write reports. I've had to, perform arrests and ask for warrants and go in front of judges and talk to lawyers. Like, that doesn't intimidate me. But for many folks, many of you who may be watching this, many of you who may be aspiring to get into the field, you're starting out. And because you're starting out, you're going to have a level of confidence that will certainly exude, just kind of, permeate from you. But imagine the person who doesn't understand the criminal justice system like you do. Imagine the person who doesn't understand the criminal justice system like I do. So we need advocates, people who can advocate on their behalf and who can ensure that they will be taken care of as they try to be made whole and try to understand what the next step is, because it's just that, step after step after step after step. So advocates have a number of responsibilities. They'll counsel crime victims and witnesses. They'll coordinate with staff and provide them with services or referrals for counseling. They'll sometimes transport victims to court, stand by them during court proceedings, assist them with filing protective orders or injunctions, and even help them seek restitution. The victim advocate may work for the police agency, may work for the court, may even work for the district attorney's office or state attorney's office. Sometimes they can even work in independent agencies, but they are there to advocate on behalf of the victim. The victim has experienced a victimization and they have nobody speaking on their behalf. That's where the victim advocate, who is trained and a professional, will come in. It's a great, great career, and it's a great opportunity for people who want to understand the discipline of victimology even further and from a unique perspective. And so last thing, when thinking about caring for the victim, well, sometimes people have to just fight back. And sometimes people may take self-defense courses, and sometimes people may have to use firearms. And sometimes people may say, you know what? My best course of not becoming a victim is to protect myself. So if I know how to operate a firearm, if I know how to take self-defense courses, if I can fight back, then I might reduce or minimize the opportunity and the likelihood of me becoming a victim. Because as I said, and my mantra is, as I'm coming to a close, you are the only person responsible for protecting and preventing your own victimization. And anyone can become just another victim. Don't just become a victim. You have the ability to become a victim, but don't become just another victim. Remember that. So, as we come to a close, Chapter 3 focused on victims and victimization. And these are all the key topics that we looked at. Remember, in terms of the target vulnerability, how someone is a vulnerable target, how someone can be antagonized, or what antagonism is, as well as gratifiability. Remember the pictures that I included in the lecture to help you remember what those are. If you hear it, think about the theories associated with victim precipitation, how someone is active and how someone is passive. Active, flaunting, passive, they're just there. They're just having a good time, but yet they still became a victim. And of course, the lifestyle theories. I cannot stress enough in any class that I've ever lectured on. Being a college student is a dangerous lifestyle. Being a criminal is a dangerous lifestyle. Living in a high-risk situation is a dangerous lifestyle. Criminologists have argued that lifestyle theory is very, very, very applicable to the discipline of criminology. Now, with that being said, I'm excited because the next time you see me in a video and the next time I come before you, we will talk about our first theory. And what better way to kick off a block on theories than what I call the baseline theory. There's a lot of theories that we'll go over and a lot of theories that are associated with criminology. But if there is one theory that you will always remember and you will never forget, it's rational choice theory. And I cannot wait to jump right into our first theory because it's a fun one. And it's the most applicable theory in all of criminology. So once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. Be sure to stay safe, and I will see you next time.